about your experience at Morris Brown?
Morris Brown College was an interesting experience for me. On a whole, I had very good teachers. I really wanted to major in music when I first went to Morris Brown. But before I left to go to college, my mother said to me, select an area where you can find a job when you finish, you know. And finishing Augustus R. Johnson, my plan was to attend Wilberforce University. But the summer before I was to come to college, Wilberforce lost its accreditation, and I came to Morris Brown College. And it just shows that the plans that you have sometimes go awry. And that was an early one that went awry. At least I thought it did. It was absolutely the best thing that probably happened to me because my whole life was directed differently from that point on. Mm-hmm.
Was education important to your mother and your father?
Yes, to my mother especially. My mother really was a person who was very interested in education, though she did not have as much education as she wanted. She believed in education, and she thought that education was really the way out. My father, on the other hand, felt that if you had a high school education, then that was adequate. Once you finished high school, you needed to get a job and go to work and not worry about higher education. So my mother's view prevailed, and I came to Morris Brown College. So I chose business education as a major at Morris Brown with basically a secretarial service kind of focus, because at that time business administration was quite different than it is today, or as it later came. During my second year at Morris Brown, one of my neighbors said to me, "You need to take accounting. You need to take a couple of accounting courses at least during your college career." And she, at that time, and she was Larzette Hale, who was the first black female in the state of Georgia to pass the CPA exam. She was head of the business department at Clark College at that time. And so I took a course in bookkeeping and accounting. That was the first course that was offered at Morris Brown with a faculty member by the name of Mr. Sam Southern. And it just caught my fancy, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And I did well in the course and enjoyed it and looked forward to the next course. I took the intermediate accounting course and sort of moved on. So I said, this is the area in which I'm going to major and or do something later. There was no accounting major at that time. It was just secretarial science in the business program and business administration, and most of that was divided between males and females, more or less. Business administration for the men and secretarial science for the girls. That was just the way it was at that time. So basically I came out of college with a secretarial kind of background and having had a number of accounting courses. My first job was as a secretary to the president of the college, Morris Brown College, Dr. John Lewis at that time.
What year was this?
This was, I finished in 51, and so that was my first job.
How long did you work for?
I worked for him for about a year and a half, and it's interesting how I got the job. When I finished Morris Brown, my intent was to go to New York University, go to New York, get a job, and work on my master's. And one day in Augusta, a phone rang, and it was Dr. Lewis, and he said to me, Miss Lee, come quickly. I need you to run this office. I had been a student.
That rhymes.
Yeah, I had been a student helper during my college years in the president's office, so I knew the office very well. At that time they had the PBX switchboard, and you had to transfer people, with the plug-ins and so on.
Lily tumbling.
Yes. And so that was an interesting experience. And so he had told me when I was a student that he was going to hire a person who was most seasoned than myself to be his main secretary. and which was fine. So that's why my decision was to plan to go to New York, and so my plans there changed, and I came back to Atlanta, and worked for him, and then about 2 years I decided that I'm going to go ahead and get my MBA as I had planned. And then, of course, the head of the business department at that time had suggested that you need to go east. You need to go east and get an education. Certainly, Georgia State and the other majority institutions were not available to us at that time. And so I decided to apply for state aid, out of state aid, and go to New York, and I did. And you want to know what out-of-state aid is?
Yes.
Yes. The state of Georgia at that time paid for blacks to go out, say above the Mason-Dixon line to get higher education, because you could not get it in the state except for what was offered at that time by Atlanta University. And of course, it was somewhat limited in terms of specialties. You could get general degrees, but not, special degrees. And so that's how I ended up going to New York University.